Colossal is a new comedy slash drama slash sci-fi fantasy film that came out a couple months ago. This movie stars Anne Hathaway as a character who plays an alcoholic. Her relationship with Dan Stevens isn't going that well because of that, so they put that relationship on hold. She moves back to an old childhood town of hers where she reunites with Jason Sudeikis. He gives her a job, everything seems to be going well, but then a monster starts to attack South Korea, and it turns out that possibly this monster and her are intertwined in some ways. I've been wanting to talk about this movie for a while now because I saw this movie near the beginning of the summer season, and so far for summer movies, it's been kind of a letdown this year. I'd have my enjoyment with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Pirates of the Caribbean 5, and also Wonder Woman. Those movies are definitely good, but I think those movies all have their own individual problems. And then the season also has had disappointments like Baywatch, King Arthur, Alien Covenant, and more recently The Mummy, and also the movie I reviewed last time, It Comes at Night. This season has been really letting me down as far as movies go. And with this weekend's Cars 3 coming out, which I have little to no expectations for, I've just been wanting a film that's fresh, unique, creative in some degree, but while also being entertaining enough. I just want that kind of great film. And though Colossal didn't come out during the summer movie season, I saw it near the beginning of the season, and I really enjoyed this film. It is honestly really great. I want to see more movies like Colossal because, in a different screenwriter's hands, this movie could have just been over-the-top action scenes, monsters punching each other everywhere, and the budget would be like $200 million or something like that. But this movie really doesn't feel like it was written to be a large action movie at some point. This movie's script is really mainly about the characters themselves. The monster element is there, and it is really good, but the majority of this film is focused on the character relationship of Jason Sudeikis and Anne Hathaway, who, by the way, these two are spectacular in this film, not just because of performance, but also characters. These characters are honestly really well written here. Some of the more well-written characters I've seen so far in 2017. I was a little worried about Anne Hathaway going into this movie because when you're playing a drunk alcoholic character, that could get annoying. There's always that possibility, but I think Anne Hathaway pulled it off really well, and she actually has some form of sympathy with her performance where you actually kind of feel bad for her when things go wrong because of her problem. And seeing Anne Hathaway go through her character arc was really good, especially when she's interacting with Jason Sudeikis' character, who really took me off guard. I've always appreciated Jason Sudeikis, but there's never been that movie where I thought he is legit awesome in that. Colossal is the first movie that proves that Jason Sudeikis can do much more than just silly comedy. I don't want to give too much away that could ruin some people's enjoyment of it, but let's just say Jason Sudeikis' character starts off in one direction, then there's a change, and it goes a completely different direction that you probably weren't expecting to begin with. And seeing Jason Sudeikis actually have that kind of range as an actor blew me away. He was awesome in this movie. He kind of steals this movie from Anne Hathaway at a couple parts because he is that good, especially one scene in the bar, which is great. And I did mention that there is a shift. It kind of does shift from a kind of silly comedy to more of a drama movie. I've heard some people actually complain about that shift, saying it felt too sudden. I actually didn't feel that way at all. Like, I remembered back to the first half of the movie, and there are some hints in that first half that kind of do explain why some things are happening in the second half and why it changed so suddenly. And I didn't even feel taken aback when some things started to change. I actually got more interested in the story itself, which was already interesting to begin with. And the story is really so interesting because not only does it balance the tones very well, but it's also just a really well-written movie. The characters are all well-written, and the story itself is fascinating. It's nothing you've ever seen before, I can tell you that for sure. And there's so much creativeness behind this movie that this summer has been really lacking as far as movies go. It's honestly so refreshing to see a movie that's also original, but it's also entertaining, and you're enjoying what you're watching. Because whenever the movie wants to get silly and funny, they can do that, but whenever they need to switch to the drama aspect, they can do that really well too. And also the monster stuff as a whole, you can kind of tell from the trailer that the CGI isn't perfect. I didn't notice it a whole lot. There are only a couple parts where it's like, oh, okay, I can feel the budget constraint on that, but it's not really a problem with the movie, just budget-wise. But even then, it's not like it was a huge hindrance on my overall enjoyment with this film because I was so into the story that I honestly didn't really mind some of the CGI. And even though the monster stuff is really cool, it is a really neat design, but honestly what I loved the most about this film were the characters more than the actual monster and action going on in South Korea, which honestly is really great. I've been seeing too many movies recently where the action overtakes some of the actual character and story elements. This is one of those movies where the action stuff is really good and you enjoy watching it, it, but whenever they get down to the actual story and focus more on the characters, you enjoy it even more. And there's some supporting characters like Dan Stevens as Anne Hathaway's boyfriend. I was also worried that he was just going to be a waste, like they were just going to have him play the throwaway boyfriend character that doesn't need to be there. I thought Dan Stevens was actually pretty good, and also Tim Blake Nelson and some other dude are playing Jason Sudeikis' buddies, drunk buddies. They were also really funny too, and they played an important part of the story that I really enjoyed. I have a couple issues with this movie. For one, the monster comes to South Korea and like the same location and destroys something, but then whenever they cut to like the next day when the monster shows up again, it like looks exactly the same as it was before it got destroyed last time. But that didn't really take me out of it. I actually didn't even really think about that until like a couple days after watching the movie. And also they attempt to explain something fantasy-wise, but their explanation, you could tell they're trying to go with a sense of, see? Now you get it. And instead, it felt like, oh, okay, but what was that exactly? So that could have been explained a little bit better. These flaws are kind of small to me because the CGI didn't affect how much I enjoyed the scenes going on. And also that explanation scene, for the most part, it still worked for the plot, even though there was a bit that was still missing from it. Overall, Colossal is a unique, fresh, original film that I think a lot more people need to be seeing, because I want to see more movies like this, because the characters are all great here. Jason Sudeikis is amazing in this film, and Anne Hathaway is so awesome too. These two worked really well together as well. Seeing their relationship unfold throughout the course of the movie was great. I'm gonna give Colossal an A-. If you can find this film, please go check it out. It is so unique and fresh. I want more people to see it because I don't want to be the only one who's seen it. I want more people to see this movie because it's actually one of the better films to have come out in 2017. But if you've seen Colossal already, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.